Hey everyone, welcome to Walking Without Rhythm. I'm Jeremy. This is Marcel.
Marcel. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. And Cleo. Cleo's going to contribute so much to this episode of Walking Without Rhythm, where we talk about Dune House Corrino, also known as why was this trilogy a trilogy? So this book continues the whole storyline of like what's been going on with everyone. Leto Atreides is still mourning the death of his son. His concubine Jessica is requested to go to, oh gosh, I can't even remember the Corrino
Kitane. Yeah. Kitane, I think, right?
Catane,
Yeah.
to be a lady in waiting, but it's literally the Bene Gesserit want to um, monitor her pregnancy because they're one generation away from getting the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah.
Little do they know that Jessica has willed the Kwisatz Haderach into being. The Fremen are still doing Fremen things under Liet Kynes' leadership. That's pretty much all that plot. Um, the big plot in this is that Shaddam the Fourth has become a tyrant over the spice and is taking it out on everyone who has illegal spice hoards so that he can control the market of spice with his synthetic spice, um, a mall, which is being developed on Ix by the Twi'leksu. Meanwhile, Romber is preparing a force with Leto to attack uh, Ix and take it back for House Vernius to restore House Vernius's power. Um, so instead of like just neglecting the Emperor's plot, it's at the forefront. Also, he has a brother, a half brother that is also Romber's half brother because they share the same mother, who serves very little to no purpose whatsoever to the plot.
That was so useless.
It
That
was
entire
used.
plot line.
This whole book is just to show that Shaddam the Fourth is both evil and stupid.
But
Because
isn't it funnier though when you imagine it's Christopher Walken doing all these things?
it's like unacceptable. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it any way I look at it. And oh gosh, what is his second in command who's running
Oh, Count Fenring, Count Hasimir
Fenring?
Fenring.
He's
Yeah.
the saving grace of this book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
his
there's a lot of
weird
plot lines.
stutter.
A lot of plot lines in this book, and it's hard to keep track of them. Like you just mentioned, Liet Kynes doing the Fremen stuff, and I completely forgot about any of that being in this book because it goes nowhere, and there's literally no point to it.
It is
Um,
literally for member berries for Dune. That
yeah,
is the whole point. Well, you have to have the Fremen in there because the Fremen have done things in the previous two books. And in this, it's like the Fremen are trying to get more independent and they're just rebelling against the Harkonnens. I didn't even mention the Harkonnens. They don't have a point other than there's this stupid subplot where the Baron and Beast Raban try to learn manners,
oh,
which
etiquette
then leads,
lessons. Yeah,
yeah, they
yeah.
start having etiquette lessons and then they take their etiquette instructor and they drown him in sewage, which I don't know why that was in a book, but it was.
It was pretty funny though. It was kind of funny.
It was. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this book is. I like this book more than the previous two.
Yeah, I think it's a fast-paced book. It's a exciting read because you have the Great Spice War
Mhm.
developing. Uh, my main issue with this book is that even though it was I guess what you would consider to be somewhat of a page turner, it didn't make sense that something this significant, at least to me, would have occurred this close to Dune in the timeline. Like we're talking what, like 15, 16 years away from
Yeah,
Dune, because
Paul is born in this book,
right,
so it's
and
about 14 years
I-
later.
even that, like we can get into like some spoilers, right? Like Paul gets kidnapped by Piter DeVries, uh,
Oh, yeah, we figure out why Piter's a Gola.
right?
That was
Um,
ridiculous.
and Piter ends up getting killed by, who is it? Was it what's her name? Jessica's
Mahayam.
mother. Yeah, yeah, Gaius Helen Mahayam.
I forgot
And
that she was Jessica's mother, even though it's brought up now you
that's
mentioned it,
right.
it's brought up
Yeah.
constantly in this book.
Um, yeah, so he gets executed, and like the baby Paul gets saved and brought back to Jessica. It's funny because the entire book leads up to, Jessica keeping it a secret, like even up
Mhm.
to the point of her birth. And I thought it was funny how they don't do any ultrasounds or anything like that. She's like, no, no, she doesn't need it. Mahayam's like, she would know if something was wrong with her baby. I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, why wouldn't you do at least an
Well,
ultrasound?
how would Jessica know when she didn't know that she was carrying a baby in House Atreides that was deformed?
Yeah,
You remember Jessica's sister that she mercy kills
that's right.
in House
That's right.
Atreides? It's like,
So yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a good point actually. So if Mahayam, gave birth to a defective child and didn't know about it beforehand, then how is Jessica supposed to be expected to know that her baby's healthy and fine in this book without even doing any type of medical testing? And this is like so far into the future that I imagine even like the most basic medical test would tell anyone that she was having a boy and not a girl, as was intended, because in order for the Quitsats Haderach to be born, Jessica had to have a girl.
mhm,
Um, we were talking earlier. This is like has nothing to do with House Corrino, but they're like one generation away from the Kwisatz Haderach, right? They
mhm.
need Jessica's girl was supposed to be the mother of the Kwisatz Haderach,
Yeah, and Fey Ralph was supposed to be the father.
right? But if we consider Leto the Second, the God Emperor of Dune, to be the Kwisatz Haderach, then it kind of works because it's like, Paul isn't, even though Paul's supposed to be, I guess, but like it's actually like his descendant, so it is like two in line. That's what I always thought. I was like,
That was
Leto,
that I think
yeah,
that was Frank Miller.
wrong, Frank, yeah,
Frank Herbert's idea, but the difference was
yeah,
because Jessica gave birth to Paul, they
right,
had the Benny Gesserit had no control
right,
over Leto the second, the tyrant. They called him the tyrant because, I mean, he treated them the way, quite frankly, I believe the Benny Gesserit should be treated.
yeah. He cut them
Uh,
out of the process.
yeah, and this is something I just want to point out. This is something that truly frustrates me as a fan of the early Dune books. Starting with Heretics, we're supposed to like the Benny Gesserit. I genuinely don't.
Yeah,
I think they're deceitful. I think that they're power hungry and they just want to control everything. And I just can't get behind that. And I liked in God Emperor of Dune that it's kind of satisfying when they are put in their place. They have such a little role in
yeah,
God Emperor. And then it was really frustrating in Heretics and Chapter. As I talked about this, I think last season when we reviewed them. It's just really annoying that we're supposed to like them, and then going into this, it's one of those things that because it's very clear that Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert read all six of the Frank Herbert's books
yeah.
before writing this trilogy, because there are certain things from Heretics and Chapter House that show up in these books,
Chair dogs.
chair dogs, which really
Yeah.
does not make sense. I was fully expecting futars to show up, my
Oh God.
nemesis, the original furries.
Well, let me ask you, what did you think of this? It was like a subplot of a subplot. So Lady Anna Rule, who is the wife of Shaddam the Fourth, and also Benny Gesserit. I was gonna say a Benny Gesserit witch because you've got me so inflamed against them now that I'm gonna refer to them as witches.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
I mean, Duncan Idaho refers to them as the witches in pretty much every book.
right. And I think so does Baron Harkonnen. So Lady Anna Rule basically spends the entire book kind of going crazy. Like she has all of her ancestors kind of talking, and they're
I
trying to warn her against something. And I guess what they're trying to warn her against is that Jessica screwed up the program, the breeding program.
Yeah, because it's so we've seen stuff like this happen before. Because Ilea does something similar, and then she gets possessed by the bear and she becomes abomination.
Right.
And that I think I liked bringing that back. And as a prequel, that's nice. Kind of, uh, it's a nice reference if you were to read House Corrino and then you read Dune, like you read through several books, and then in Children of Dune, you're like, oh, this happened, and I like
Right.
that they don't make it worse than what happens to Ilea. I thought that was very smart because
I was
that's
yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say I was surprised that the Bene Gesserit didn't kill Paul Atreides. Because if you pretend about like you've never read the Dune series before, like by all accounts, you think that they're gonna, and even Jessica thinks that th're gonna harm him or kill him or something like that because
Mhm.
he is not what she was supposed to do, right? She was supposed to give birth to a daughter, and so I feel like we almost have to like suspend our disbelief that they didn't kill him. I guess because Mahayim is has a soft spot for Jessica because the book makes it tells you that plenty of times.
Yeah, and I think this is when the schism between the two of them happens, and that's why she's forever cold to Jessica,
Right,
like, when we get into Dune. I think that was the reasoning, and she's like, "I'm gonna spare her son, Leto's son."
right.
Because she hands him off to Leto, says, "Here's your son, Duke Atreides," and, like, leaves.
He's barely a character in this book. Romber, I think, takes on greater significance than he does.
Well, yeah, Leto has his arc, like, near the beginning because
Yeah,
the Twi'leksu, the nasty, nasty Twi'leksu, are going to desecrate an Atreides memorial on this backwater planet, and just to get back at him because they couldn't get samples of oh gosh, what was it? Victor at the end
Victor.
of
Yeah,
House Harkonnen. So Leto has Duncan Idaho carpet bomb the the memorial and kills a bunch of Twi'leksu.
that's funny. I
Uh, that's his arc, and then he suddenly is like
yeah.
on the warpath against the Twi'leksu for the rest of the book.
Yeah, he does make, I think, that speech, right? He makes a speech basically saying like we're taking back Ix.
Mhm.
Um and Thufir Hawat is given something to do here because he basically uh, what is he creates a diversion to draw Shaddam's forces away. So
Yeah,
that
he goes to the Rachese's planet because Shaddam is just horribly committing genocide
like left, right, and
whenever he
center.
sees a spice horde.
Yeah. Um
He almost destroys Arrakis. That's a whole stupid thing in this
that's
book.
right. He was gonna nuke Arrakis because he was so sure that his Amal, or Ejitamal, as I like to call it, because after Ejitica, the Tleilaxu created it, he was so sure that Amal uh, was everything that it was advertised to be. But instead, like, what is it? Amal basically just causes people to go crazy. Like
It
the
is
Sart,
basically methamphetamine
yeah,
with
the Sardaukar use it and then become like super strong and crazy.
it's like a mix of methamphetamine and PCP. It's bizarre. Because Hidara Jidaka just decides he's going to buy the trust of the Sardaukar on battalion on Ix by just giving him drugs, and he becomes addicted to the Agitamol. Also, this is when we find out that Kater's girlfriend was a Benny Gesserit because we had to. That's a retcon. That's a blatant retcon.
Yeah, there was no hint of that whatsoever in the previous book. Was her name Moral Alaikum or something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, other than they had apparently had bomb sex in House, House Harkonnen. That
Yeah,
one.
okay, fair enough.
That's like the only thing. But I guess she was a Bene Gesserit spy. 'Cause the Bene Gesserit are like you have their dip their toes in everything. Also, they destroy the node ship
That's right.
because I think people complained that didn't make any sense. So
Why is
that's
it
not.
around like 3,000 years before it's supposed to be around?
So I guess the Harkonnens make another node ship at some other point. Maybe that happens in Paul of Dune. I don't know.
Yeah, but they not only destroy the notion, like they destroy like all the scientists who are working on it or something like, or all their work. They destroy the research station.
Yes. Well, the Bene Gesserit don't do that.
No, that's Shaddam's forces, I
The
think.
solder card too,
Yeah.
inadvertently.
Although you mentioned earlier Kater Pilru, so that's a guy who we've been following for all three books. He's basically he was the son of the ambassador on X, and he
Mhm,
stayed on, and his brother became a spice navigator.
mhm.
Sorry, spice navigator. Sorry, a guild navigator, and Kater failed the guild navigator program, and so stayed a human. And
Mm.
when Ix was invaded by the Tleilaxu, he became a freedom fighter. And we've been basically following him. He was barely in the last book, but he takes on special significance in this book.
He was in there more than Shaddam was.
Right. And I feel like his arc wasn't necessarily pointless because A, he gave us a view of what life was like on Ix under the Tleilaxu rule. And B, he um, kind of like he served this purpose that like he was helping keep the flame alive, the flame of rebellion alive on Ix,
Mhm.
such that when Romber does show up, like he's able to help him rally people. But man, what a what a terrible fate. This guy just suffered under oppressive rule,
Mhm.
living almost like he's in like 1984, just trying to like hide from the government for like 20 years, and then finally sees his planet liberated, like everything that he's wanted, and he just dies. He just kicks it. I mean, it's nice that he got to see that before he died, but God, they
Well,
really.
his brother also dies from a genome poisoning. I guess we're
That's
gonna
right.
get into like we're just
Yeah,
spoiling everything.
yeah,
Um, Count Fenring does not trust a genome because he's the only smart character in of
right.
our villain characters.
He's very shrewd, very, very shrewd.
And so he tests it on a couple navigators. One straight up like gets poisoned and ends up crashing into Wallach 9 where the Bene Gesserit are.
That's kind of funny.
Um K- uh Kater's brother, whose name's escaping me. Um
uh,
he folds into way out in the middle of nowhere and he senses an enemy coming,
yeah,
which is I think I know what it is, but
me
I
too.
will not say
Yeah,
it.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Um, I'm pretty sure I know what it could be. I mean, it's also possible it could be the honored Matre, but I think it is something different that they were setting up.
Right. So he senses the enemy coming, but it also the I think the text says the enemy senses him as well.
Hmm.
And then it's like, but why would it then take the enemy? Because I assume this enemy is what they're setting up for like the hunters and sandworms of Dune stuff.
Hmm.
But why would the enemy take like thousands of years to find their way to?
I think he folded space that far out
Wow, crazy.
because it kills him to fold back to where they're supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, he does die.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember his name either. It's something Pilru. I don't know. It's gonna come to me.
Yeah, that's fine. He's barely a character in this.
Um,
Too many characters in
I
these
would say
flipping
though,
books.
the Great Spice War aspect of it, like Shaddam acted really stupid in this book, like
Hmm.
really high handed. Um, obviously the Landsrad, like the great houses, they
Hmm.
wouldn't stand for like half the stuff that he pulled.
Hmm.
Um, but I thought it was the that was the most interesting part of the book, as well as the Spice War, and And the battle at the end was pretty
Mhm.
interesting.
And you can if they weren't if Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert hadn't done the Caladan trilogy, you can infer how, because the Harkonnen, it's clear that Shaddam doesn't like the Harkonnens and doesn't trust them anymore
Yeah,
by the end of this. He also does not. Leto makes him look bad, so it makes sense that he would kind of conspire with the Harkonnens to get revenge,
yeah,
like in Dune. Like you can infer from there that, like, it's not spelled out, but it's there enough, and I appreciate that. It's not like Revenge of the Sith, where everyone goes to where they're supposed to be and doesn't do anything for 19 years, right?
right. Um, I think though, like this book, again, what really bugged me about this book is this whole concept of like too many big things happening that are just never referenced again, and they're never referenced again because obviously these books were written far after the original Dune books. It just doesn't make sense that the Great Spice War was never mentioned, or what Leto had done in the past, or any of that kind of stuff.
I'm assuming that books like Paul of Dune, Winds of Dune do reference these,
For sure, they'd have to.
to try to make it make sense. But it's this whole narrative, right? That a lot of Dune fans have a problem with these books.
Yeah, I'm going to use an example. It's like Star Wars in the current canon. But they did comics between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and like all this crazy stuff. Like, there's like a giant war between Crimson Dawn and the Empire.
Mhm.
There's like a galaxy-wide droid uprising. There's like the bounty hunter wars. There's all this crazy stuff that happens in this 1 year period between like Empire and Return of the Jedi, and it just narratively doesn't make sense because none of these things are ever mentioned in Return of the Jedi, or even like,
Mhm.
and obviously they wouldn't be because they're written afterwards. But I feel like when you try and shoehorn something so big into a part of the timeline that's so close to like the original texts or the original movies, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work.
Well,
So I think I told you, just to finish the thought, I think I told you that as I was reading this, I was like, this book it's not a bad book, but I
yeah, it's
feel like it's
fine.
not. Yeah, it doesn't fit well within the Dune universe.
Well, here's the problem. This shouldn't have been a trilogy. There is not enough worth being 3 books. It should have been 1
Yeah,
book.
yeah,
Just setting everything up, just have it over a 30-year period,
right.
and make it like that, you know? But no, it for money reasons, I think that's the only reason that it's 3 books. There's just not enough material. There's so many, even in this book has a little bit of a lull in the middle. But every single one of these house books has had like a really boring middle.
That's right. Yeah. Um, the one thing that I think remains pretty strong throughout is like those little epitaphs at the beginning of each chapter, right? Like it's like an excerpt from something, or like a piece of dialogue between characters or something like that. I think it really works well, and they do
Mhm.
a good job of it. Um, that's actually like my favorite part of these books, is just to read those little snippets at the beginning of each chapter.
Yeah, for world building purposes.
The world building, and also like that is the most philosophy that you get out of these books, because the Frank Herbert books are kind of like chock full of philosophy, and
Yeah,
these books are literally just plot.
plot and totalitarian dialogue. Although the totalitarian dialogue's gotten a lot better. It
Yeah,
was almost unbearable in House Atreides. The dialogue, everyone's just explaining things
that's right. Yeah,
verbatim almost, and it's just too much.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
and
the
it's
problem is though, for this book to pay off, you got to read the first two, right? Like for anything to make sense in this book, you have to read those first two.
Mhm. Because you're like, who is this Romber guy? Why is he a cyborg?
Is he mentioned in any of the original 6 Dune books? I cannot recall for the life of me. No.
I'm almost certain he's not.
So another spoiler, if you want to plug your ears for 10 seconds. He survives this book, which surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that the Twi'lexu lose Ix because they don't have it in Frank Herbert's books.
Right, that I recall.
I mean, hell, the Twi'lexu aren't even in Dune. They aren't a
Not in
thing
not in the
till
original. They
Dune
come in
Messiah.
Messiah when the Golas come, yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was the
the
thing.
face dancer. Yeah,
When Mahayim gets desperate and becomes a blatant villain,
right.
which I like that this book is starting to establish her becoming villainous
Right.
because she's not out and out a villain in Dune. She's more nuanced. She's not a good character, but she's not straight up she's
She's
not.
pretty neutral. Pretty neutral in Dune, I would say.
Yeah, Dune Messiah. It's not going her ways. She gets kind of desperate and starts plotting with a bunch of navigators and Twi'lexu and Irulan. Okay. Here's my thing. I do have a complaint. I don't like Irulan in this.
She's like a kid, right? She's what maybe like,
Irulan's too old.
yeah, how old was she in this book? She's either between like 10 and 14 or something like that.
I think she was like 12.
12, yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
I didn't realize she was that much older than Paul.
Well, that I had that issue with Glossu Raban because he must be like 30 plus years older than Fade Routha,
Yeah, well, yeah.
right? And that just doesn't really make sense to me. Um, yeah, I thought Irulan and Paul were around the same age. Like that's the impression that I got reading the original first 3
Because
books.
she's incredibly immature in Dune Messiah.
Yeah,
I mean, I like her in Children of Dune. She is the character we've talked about this off of the podcast before, but you genuinely feel terrible for Irulan in
for
Children
sure.
of Dune. She realizes that she did something horribly wrong
Right,
at the end of Messiah, and that that Paul and Cheney's children are her redemption, right? And she is constantly undermined by Ilea, who is a crazy woman
right.
who has created this whole cult around Paul's memory.
So yeah, I would contrast Irulan with Kylea, who wasn't in this book, right? Because she kicked it in the second book.
Yeah.
Um, but like both are kind of these women who have been pushed aside. They're
Uh-huh.
not the leading ladies, so to speak, and they both react fairly poorly to it. But where I think Irulan is a much more redeemable character than Kylea, whom
Well,
what
Kalia
yeah
becomes Lady Macbeth of
yeah
House Harkonnen. It's just
that's right.
ridiculous.
I I did not miss her in this book whatsoever. I think this book is better because she's not in it.
Oh, I agree. She was okay in House of Atreides,
That's right. Yeah.
but she was like 12 through most of the book.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Was there anything in this book that kind of surprised you, either plot wise or narrative wise? I thought the prose in this book was the best of the 3. You can
Um,
see that they've kind of developed.
no,
No,
it had to be at a certain place.
right.
Um, and I knew it couldn't be too close to Dune because they shoved another trilogy in a couple years ago.
I don't understand how how is that possible? I have to read
Well,
this
they're really
trilogy.
short books for
Yeah.
one thing. Well, they shoved 4 books in because they also have Princess of Dune, which is a book that they thought was too boring, so they shelved it for like 10 years.
Whenever I go to the used bookstores in my city, I always see a hardcover copy of Princess of Dune without fail.
I have not seen one yet.
Okay.
because
There's
I'm
so many of
waiting
them.
for it. So it's the
Uh,
only one I don't own.
well, you own you own like Mentats and all those other ones. Wow. Okay. Yeah, good
I
for
own
you.
everything. It's on this bottom shelf down here.
It's
Uh,
that's its status in your life. You've relegated it
well,
to the
it
bottom.
just it's where it fits.
Yeah.
That's just how that goes. I don't know. I could honestly, there's no hierarchy to things. My novelizations are also on a bottom shelf on a shelf over there.
Right.
Um, it's just where things fit. It's not like there's a hierarchy to things. I mean, typically, like my Star Wars omnibuses end up on a bottom shelf typically.
Right.
There's so many of them. They're so heavy.
Yeah.
I also the bad Stephen King books are on the bottom shelf, but that's because he's written pretty much consistently bad for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it just
Yeah.
worked out that way.
There was one thing that we haven't really talked about. What that just came to mind was what Ajitika is doing with women that he captures or whatever.
Well,
And yeah,
well, yeah, that I was that's gross.
maybe that was explained in the middle book. I can't remember.
They
But
they 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 are very vague about it in House Harkonnen.
right.
Um, but House Corrino, they kind of explain how the Gola process works and how any of the Twi'lexu technology works with just because there aren't women in Twi'lexu's city, they are all solely used
Yeah.
as incubators for various things, whether it's other Twi'lexu, Golas, Agenomal, anything, which is so
Ac-
disgusting. I knew
Axolotl
that.
tanks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what axolotl tanks are. They're essentially women who are brain dead, kind of, that are used as incubators. It's disgusting. But
It's so
I knew
yeah.
that because I was like, how was a golem? Oh, the internet took a shit.
Yeah, I think you're back though.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was gonna say, I looked up some axolotl tank art online, and it's just like truly horrifying what they do to these women.
yeah, it's horrific. And some of that's official art.
Yeah, that's it's like I think they set fire to or they destroy the axolotl tank labs on X, and I was just like, good, just put these poor things out of their misery, just
Yeah,
burn it with fire, all of it.
yeah.
Um, the I thought it was funny how so Duncan Idaho leads the forces on with Ron Bervernius on X to
Mhm.
reclaim it from the Tleilaxu, but their job is not easy because the Sardaukar on X, as you said before, they're getting bribed with this Agitamal, and they're all like incredibly strong. They're like Florida man on methamphetamines times like however many Sardaukar there are.
And PCP simply because when someone's on PCP, they don't feel anything, and
Right,
these Sardaukar get horribly mangled.
right, but they keep
And they
fighting
keep
until the
fighting.
very end. Yeah, because they're just so hopped up.
They're tweaking hard.
Yeah, they're tweaking so hard. I thought it was hilarious.
I like that. I like that was something different, and I did appreciate that. That was kind of fun, a fun idea.
Yeah,
Because what's
I
scarier than Sardaukar? Well, other than Futars, but that's neither here
a
nor
tweaked out Sardaukar.
yeah,
Now,
can you imagine Futars on a Cheetah Mall?
no,
Or a
no
chair
thanks.
dog on a poor chair dog gets abused. Well,
Wait, what?
Ajitica is on Ajita Mall. I think that was in this book. He beats up the chair dog.
Chair dogs are alive, right? Like
Yeah, they're
they're
said that's why they're nasty.
no, let's burn it with fire with along with the axolotl tanks.
Yeah,
Can't
that's
have this.
I don't know what Frank Miller again. Frank Herbert was thinking when he came up with chair dogs. It's so weird.
I know. And then when they every time they showed up in this trilogy, I was like, I think I was like messaging you being like, chair dogs, not again.
Oh,
Um,
I did. What was the other? Oh, laser tigers.
Laser Tigers, yeah. I think they were in this, but they were mentioned in this book.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a
Yeah.
thing. I mean, they showed up in Children of Dune, but it's like saying that Twi'lexu can't be in this book because they don't show up in Dune. It's
Right.
not like they're a brand new thing. Whereas like Futars and chair dogs, like are seem like new things. So
Yeah.
like it doesn't make sense to have Futars yet. And it doesn't make sense to have chair dogs. Ugh. Because like everyone would have been using chair dogs forever.
Right. Um, there was one part sort of early on in the book because we talked earlier about Shaddam's half brother, and he's like an actor, right?
Yeah.
And he's off world when like his home world or whatever gets bombed to just crap, and he comes back to see the devastation that Shaddam's Sardaukar have brought on his world. And so he what does he do? He joins like an acting troupe on like a on this world called like what, Jongleur or something like that, and
Yeah, I
he
like the jongleur
yeah,
thing. I
yeah,
thought that was kind of neat.
and he puts on a or helps put on a play.
And he has this staff. It is a play kind of like Henry the Eighth or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah, it was like a Shakespearean type of thing for one of
but
the
it's
earlier
for
Corrinos.
yeah. Oh gosh, what is that Corrino's name? Because he's referenced constantly in this trilogy.
Yeah,
Um,
um, not like Richard. No, that's too
no,
English.
it's
Richard Corrino.
no, it's like
It'll
I
come to
can't.
me. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But he was this Prince Corrino who essentially became emperor because his father became a vegetable and like he refused to take the mantle of emperor, so he ruled as the Prince Raphael Corrino.
that's right.
Was his
He
name.
was kind of like the Marcus Aurelius of the Corrinos, right?
Exactly, and I think he's going to be a character in the Legends trilogy.
Hmm.
But he's why the Corrinos are like well regarded, and
Yeah,
Shaddam is just taking a dump on the Corrino name throughout this book. I think that's a juxtaposition, but uh, um, so Shaddam's half brother has this staff with a laser in it, and he tries to fry Shaddam with it, but like doesn't fully commit, and he ends up being imprisoned.
right.
And then Kater's brother not Kater's brother, Kater's father takes
Yeah,
all
the
these
ambassador.
samples,
Yeah,
including a semen sample. We had to make sure that that was put in there.
was
So
that
that
is that the case? I don't even remember that. My
oh
God,
yeah, they take blood samples. They take every sample imaginable.
wouldn't like a swab just be like sufficient to?
It is
No.
overkill.
Oh man.
Um, and it is solely there because the guy gets his mouth sewn shut, and then Shaddam kills them himself because Shaddam likes public executions. That's a thing that has never been established ever, but he likes killing people in public on Catane, and he kills them himself via like very Joseph Stalin in space.
Yeah,
Just fries him to death with a
yeah.
laser.
Shaddam in this book, he definitely takes more of a center stage than the other two books, so I appreciate that it's called House Carino. But in this book, he's almost like cartoonishly incompetent.
Oh, he is one of the funniest villains. He's in my top five funniest villains because
Yeah,
he's so comically evil.
yeah,
Um, he- just in this book, I mean, he was just like he was evil throughout this trilogy. I mean, he had Fenring poison his father.
yeah.
Um,
Although I almost feel like Fenring talked him into that, right?
yeah, yeah, and he like becomes independent of Fenring. That's his arc in House Atreides.
Yeah. There was one part where Fenring is being impersonated by a face dancer or
That's a cool scene.
yeah. And I thought more would come of that, but Fenring survives. He escapes unscathed. I thought he was going to get like completely replaced, and he did
No,
not. No.
that would have been clever.
Yeah.
He has such a small role in Dune,
Yeah.
so it would have been feasible. But
I mean,
when he fights the face dancer on the navigator's base, that was
r-
fun. It was fun to
right.
see. I don't think
And
we had seen Fenring fight ever. We
no,
knew he could, and he's a psychopath, and he occasionally gets bored and murders people,
and the
which
book
is kind of
reminds you. Yeah.
yeah, that happens in this book too. But I mean, he used to kill Elrond's concubines out of
Yeah.
boredom.
Right. So he's a psychopath. He's kind
Mhm.
of like almost like the Fade Routha of this trilogy, but the book reminds you that he was a candidate for, or Kwisatz Haderach, or could have been a candidate or something like that.
Yeah, Jessica's told that.
And you kind of see it in this book because he has some clear superhuman skills, right? Like he can fight. He's obviously very smart and devious. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that wasn't clear in the previous two, but I mean, he was Benny Gesserit trained by his mother.
right. And
That's established in House Atreides,
and his
and that's
wife,
why he's
yeah, and his wife Margot Fenring, she has like a bit of a soft spot for him. It seems throughout the book, right? And so
Mhm.
I expect that she probably also has given him some training or some things to,
Yeah, because
yeah,
they're a very tight unit in Dune.
yeah.
They have their own language in that of their his weird mumbling stutter thing.
Hmm.
But it's
Yeah, that's what he does.
it's different in Dune than it is in these books.
Yeah.
Like they develop some bizarre. Have you ever listened to the audiobook of Dune?
The original book? No, I haven't.
So the original Dune, it's been made into so many audiobooks, but it's read by multiple narrators.
Yes, actually, you know what I have then?
And that sequence is so weird to listen to.
I got it. Maybe I got to go back and listen to it now because, like Fenring, like you said, he's such a minor character in Dune that you kind of gloss over him.
Yeah,
And yeah,
it's the sequence when Margot Fenring it's before she decides to seduce Faye
Fade
Ralpha.
Routha. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole point of it. But they have like a whole conversation about it because he is sterile.
Yes, that's made clear in these books as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
and
sterile.
that's a Frank Herbert thing. I said it
Yeah.
right. I said it's
Yeah, yeah. The Dark Knight doesn't return this time.
yeah, or RoboCop.
RoboCop. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, this book. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's shorter than the other two books. And yet it feels like more went on in this book than maybe the other two books combined in a way.
It had to lead the previous two books had to lead to something, but like I say, should have been one book.
So would you recommend these three books to anybody?
I'd recommend them to Kevin J. Anderson fans.
Yeah,
That's number one. I'd if you really, really wanted more than just the six Herbert books, recommend reading these.
right.
It's House Corrino's the best of the three because things happen, but if you were just to read this, you wouldn't know what was going on.
No, it's very much part of a trilogy. You can't
Mhm.
uncouple it from the other two books. Um, this was my favorite of the three.
Mine too.
Uh, I would probably give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. Um, maybe a little higher, but as a Dune book, it would be lower.
Yeah, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's
Yeah.
fine. So Anyway, we have another trilogy. We get to go even further back.
You know what? I'll say that this one I'm looking forward to reading the most, this trilogy. And the reason why is because when I was a kid and I wanted to know more about like, oh, the Butlerian Jihad and this, robot crusade or machine crusade, I saw at my bookstore like Butlerian Jihad, like the big hardcover version of
Mhm.
it with the nice cover, where like these books, the House trilogy had like the nice covers, right? But then they reprinted them with these very like monochrome covers. Yeah, that's exactly the one I'm talking about. I
Mhm.
like that style, and I was just like, oh, I really got to read that book. Um, and so now I finally am, all these years later.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, that's about all we have for tonight, I think.
Just tune in next time for what
Butlerian
was it?
Jihad.
Yeah, the Legends
And
trilogy.
yeah, make sure to walk without rhythm so you don't attract the worm. Have a good one.